House Bill 519 is regarding voting for incarcerated persons. And so the present law, as you know, already authorizes incarcerated persons who are not under the order of imprisonment for conviction of a felony to be allowed to vote. And so the present law also presents problems for incarcerated persons who are registered by mail but have not previously voted in person. So this bill would authorize an incarcerated voter who is otherwise authorized by present law to vote absentee by mail, or to vote absentee by mail for the first time after registering by mail. And so it is dealing mostly with allowing those who are incarcerated to vote. And we have worked with the sheriff's office and other parties.
We touched on it. This is for pretrial misdemeanor. And the pretrial part, I think, I was on criminal justice before I came here. But that's actually a lot of people. Like, if you go to a local jail, it's like half of the population in a local jail, right? It's a lot of people. So, I mean, just trying to Google about how many it is, it says maybe about 15,000 at any one time in Louisiana. And these are people that aren't convicted of anything, right? They're in pretrial detention, but we keep them there, sometimes for the entirety of their what they may eventually be sentenced for, and then a lot of the times they end up just dropping the charges and letting them out, so they don't actually ever, they may never actually be convicted of something. So anyway, that just kind of puts the scope of what the population size is of this. It's not like one or two people; it's actually a pretty big group.
The past several weeks in this committee, we have discussed allowing people who have touched our criminal justice system to be allowed to either regain their rights to votes, and in this instance is retaining a right that they have not lost. And I thank you for bringing this clarity. And each time we sit in this committee, I hope my committee members are learning something new about our criminal justice system. And I'm glad you pointed on the how broad the term of an incarcerated person is. In law school we learned it, but that's not something that you typically learn or know in every day. When you think of incarcerated, you think of just somebody in Angola or, doing 15 to life, and not somebody just waiting to see the judge for the first time since they've been picked up by the police.
So if for whatever reason they're incarcerated and they're not able to go and vote that first time, are we saying, and they may not be convicted or anything, but I mean they're in that situation, are we saying that their vote, that they're just not going to be able to vote because of the circumstances? I mean, isn't their vote just as important as those of us who aren't incarcerated, such that we do everything possible to ensure their vote, whether they're voting for us or not, and to, at the same time, maintain the integrity of our elections? Isn't there a way? I realize it might be a little bit more difficult, and it is somewhat aggravating because it's not your or my or your department's fault that they're incarcerated. It may not be their fault. But isn't there a way to accomplish both? It's real easy, and I catch myself doing it all the time, that because someone is incarcerated, we immediately call them lawbreakers. They may be. There's probably a good chance they are. But until they're adjudicated to actually be guilty of something, shouldn't they be afforded every right?
Shouldn't we safeguard the right to vote as much as we safeguard election integrity?
Absolutely, but the right to vote is tainted if the election is tainted. We have to make sure that the elections are safe and secure, and that we're, the person who says they are who they say they are on, we have to make sure that they are who they say they are on the application, and we do that by requiring in-person voting for the first time that somebody votes when they apply online.
Right, but we have exceptions, as been discussed, and if we review again those exceptions, our uniformed overseas citizens, absentee voting will be, they can do that, or the voting accessibility for elderly and handicapped, which elderly and handicapped isn't. I mean, unless it is their first time to vote, I guess they could register late, right? But so, and then also special program for handicapped voters. So these are things where it's circumstances, outside of their control from a voting perspective, because obviously they signed up to be in the military and things like that. So there's exceptions to these circumstances, and we have in place, and the process works fine for them, right? And so I don't understand the difference just because someone is physically located in a prison facility, which if you want to, if you ask me, you should have more confidence in they are who they say they are, because my God, if they're not, I don't know, how do you do that, right? Somebody's civil rights have been violated to a significant degree.
If you sit there and listen to testimony and you heard everyone say that particularly there is an issue here that we need to correct, and you keep saying now you want to look at it, you want to keep looking at it for things that you have problems with, the consensus is on this panel pretty much, I'm not speaking for everybody, but I can feel the fact that we think there's an issue here that needs to be addressed.
The right to vote is the absolute most cornerstone part of our entire democracy. And I've heard everything I needed to hear in regards to that the folks that we are trying to help today have not been deprived of that right. That's still their constitutional right under our system. So we need to do whatever we got to do to make sure that they have the ability to cast their vote. Because the second you impede anyone's ability to cast their right to vote, for the lowest amongst us, then it doesn't mean anything to all of us either. So at the appropriate time, I'll move favorable.
Representative Boyer? No. Representative Wilford Carter? Representative Desitel? No. Representative Farnham? Representative Gadberry? No. Representative Ivy? Yes. Representative Jenkins? Yes. Representative Mike Johnson? Yes. Representative Lacombe? Yes. Representative Lyons? Yes. Representative McGee? Yes. Representative Nelson? Yes. Representative Newell? Yes. Representative Thomas? No. Representative White? 8 yeas, 4 nays.
The House Bill 519 reported to the floor as amended.
Thank you, members.